Now, Lebanon is bracing for more anger on the streets as the economy sinks further due to the coronavirus outbreak. Armed soldiers in military vehicles are on patrol in Tripoli. That's after a night of demonstrations against the government's handling of the economy turned violent. A 26-year-old man was killed in clashes with security forces in Tripoli and in Beirut. People defied a coronavirus lockdown, throwing petrol bombs and vandalizing banks. Zaina Khudr is in Tripoli for us in northern Lebanon, joins us from there. So I can see behind you, it looks like some smoke, looks like some people on the streets. Are things heating up again?
Yes, Sammy, things are heating up again. Chaos in the streets of this northern city. Anti-government protesters trying to block roads. They've been vandalizing banks. It's what they did really last night as protests turned into riots. The Lebanese army out in force, they are responding with tear gas, and this is why we had to move away. And at the same time, some of these protesters are quite violent because they don't want us to film their faces as they vandalize public and private property. So the situation is quite tense. People here are saying they have nothing to lose, economic hardships that they're facing. It has been worsening in recent days. As you can hear, rubber-coated bullets are being used by the Lebanese army. In recent days, the Lebanese lira lost its value. It depreciated at least 60%. So people here, the majority of people here, earn their salaries in Lebanese lira. So they've lost the value of their money. And many others here are unemployed. Tens of thousands of people have lost their jobs in recent months. This economic crisis is not new. It was made worse by the lockdown, the containment measures to battle the coronavirus. But this problem, this crisis, has been going on for months now. A protest movement began in October. That protest movement now revived as the situation, the economic and financial situation, worsens by the day.
Zaina, all right, if you need to take cover, I'm not sure if you can still talk. So, feel free to tell me if you need to. Yeah. But what I was going to say is, a lot of the reporting talks about the lockdown making things even worse economically for people there. The pictures we're looking at now doesn't look like a whole lot of lockdown. There's a lot of people out on bikes, in cars, standing around, burning things.
Yeah, Jazeera. The lockdown has been eased to a certain extent. The government realizes that at the end of the day, people have to return to work. A lot of these people rely on daily wages to survive. And according to the authorities, in many ways, they've been able to contain the virus. Some 700 cases, 24 deaths on a daily basis, approximately 10 new infections. But at the end of the day, there's not a lot of testing being done. But you talk to anybody here and they say, coronavirus, well, we're dying from hunger. Our children are asking us for food. Our children are hungry, and we cannot afford to buy food. Inflation, more than 50%, an increase of more than 50%. And that is according to the economy minister. So officials are acknowledging this crisis, but they haven't come up with any plan to solve this crisis. Lebanon needs cash. It needs hard currency. There's a shortage of dollars, and it doesn't have many friends in the international community. So the government really has little options to solve this problem. And in the interim, you're seeing people becoming more and more poorer and finding it really difficult to survive.
As you're talking there, Zaina, the black smoke is really billowing now. What exactly is on? I assume something's on fire down there, right? Can you tell us what exactly are we looking at down at the end of that street?
Yes, Sammy, the banks. The banks.
So that's a bank on fire. Obviously, people.
They've been vandalizing banks.
Right. Then they're not happy, I guess, with the fact that they can't get enough money out.
No, capital controls, informal capital controls, have been in place since November. So you have really no access to your savings. This is. But many of these people here do not have bank accounts. These are the impoverished people of Lebanon who cannot find work, who, if they don't work today, then they can't feed their children. But yes, banks have imposed controls. The Banking Association says they have no other choice because they don't want capital flight, and that there's a liquidity crisis in the country, and that they lent the money to the state, and the politicians wasted public funds, and the state defaulted on its debt and couldn't pay banks back. So many people blame the banks, and even if you have a dollar account, I'm just going to move so you can see the army deploy in force. They are deploying. Yeah, so if you have a dollar account, the banks are dispersing your money in Lebanese lira, which has lost value. So there is an undeclared haircut. But it's not just the banking sector people are upset at. People are upset at the political elite, which they blame really for years of mismanagement, years of corruption. And now the state is close to bankruptcy. And like I said, Lebanon needs cash. The international community will not provide money. They've made this very, very clear, unless politicians implement much needed structural and economic reforms. And politicians are reluctant to do that. Why? Because if they do that, then they lose access to the state's resources, which many accuse them of using, exploiting for political gain. So there is a real crisis. The state is under pressure. The new government says, well, we're all technocrats. We took office in January. We're not responsible for this crisis. But their opponents will say, well, those who appointed you are political parties who have been governing for decades. And now what you have is political tensions worsening between the government and the opposition.
Zaina, just to take in what's happening, because this looks a little surreal, I guess, to viewers perhaps from around the world. On the left side of the screen down there, we've got a bank on fire. On the right side of the screen, we can see soldiers just over your shoulder milling around. And everyone just seems to be a little bit relaxed about all of this. I mean, what kind of measures are they trying to take back control of the situation, or are they just resigned to what seems to be a country and not just an economy almost in free fall at this point?
Well, Lebanon really is a country which is immune to violence. Years and years of conflicts, political instability. So for many Lebanese, what is going on here today is not unusual. But there is no doubt this is a very dangerous situation. The country is at a crossroad. People are growing hungry. The state is trying to impose its authority on the ground. The army will say that we allow you to peacefully protest. You can gather, but we will not allow people to destroy public and private property. We will take action. And it seems this is what the Lebanese army is trying to do now. Take control of the street, try to restore calm. They are deploying on main roads. As we notice, a lot of the protesters have now left on their motorcycles. People are worried of, being arrested. Last night there were a number of arrests. At the same time, there were injuries, not just among the protesters. You mentioned earlier one protester was killed, but there were injuries among the army soldiers as well. And the army releasing a statement not too long ago saying that they will investigate the shooting incident that resulted in the death of the protester, because this wasn't the intention. So they are promising to launch an investigation. Will it calm the street? It's hard to say, because we've been talking to people here, and what they tell you is that the army shouldn't be shooting at us. The army should be taking action against politicians who they call corrupt politicians. They say that these politicians should be taken to prison instead of, the state using their weapons against the Lebanese people. So it is, what we're seeing now really is a warning or a sign of what's to come if there is no solution to the worst economic crisis this country is facing in decades. The lira is still at an official rate of 1,500. And if you withdraw money from the bank, that's how much they give you against the dollar. But there are no dollars in banks. So you exchange it in the street, it's now 4,000 lira. So you can imagine what it means for people who earn in the Lebanese pound, and with inflation skyrocketing more than 50%.
Zaina, sorry to interrupt you, but we can hear gunshots. I think that was gunshots there. Just tell us what's going on, and of course, needless to say, take cover if you need to.
No, it seems like the army is using rubber-coated bullets in order to, as well as tear gas, to disperse protesters. They're trying to clear this square. The square is really symbolic because when the protest movement began in October, this was where people were gathering. This was the main protest site. So the army is trying to clear the square, close the roads that lead to the Bank Street. You can see the army. We can't ask them any questions. The army will not speak to us, but it is clear what they're trying to do. They're trying to take control. If you can see the tear gas, they're lobbing tear gas. So
yeah, we can see the white smoke. I'm assuming that's tear gas, right? But it's not clear. You know, it looks like the protesters have cleared off now at this point. I'm not sure who they're shooting tear gas at. Well,
they want to clear the square. You can see some young men still on their motorcycles. But the biggest question is, what will happen in a few hours' time? The people will just return to the streets. Is this going to stop them? Yes, they were clearly, the very fact that they all dispersed and ran away, a lot of them are afraid of being arrested.
So hang on a minute, Zaina. So just to clarify then, the guys that we're seeing on motorbikes, are they the protesters? Has this protest movement transformed into sort of mobile motorbike protest movement?
No, but a lot of people from Tripoli use motorbikes because it is a very impoverished city. People cannot afford cars, and that's why. So, no, what we saw throughout the day and last night were people in the streets demonstrating, gathering in the square, as well as targeting and vandalizing banks. So this is, you can clear the square now. But the biggest question, like I said, what happens in the next few hours if the economic crisis is not resolved? The cabinet, the Lebanese government, was in session a short while ago. They just finished their meeting. We didn't hear anything about an economic rescue plan. This is what the government calls it, a rescue plan on how to deal with the crisis. Nothing presented so far. They did suggest touching people's deposits in banks to try to really fund the state. But there was an uproar and people went against that. So what is the government going to do? It is close to bankruptcy and people are only getting angrier, and the tens of thousands have lost their jobs in the past few months. Hundreds of restaurants have closed. Hotel occupancy down to 10%, and that was even before the coronavirus lockdown. The tourism sector has been hit hard. Many sectors have been hit hard by this crisis. So it is really, Lebanon has been at the crossroads many times in the past. It has reached turning points many times in the past since the end of the civil war in 1990. But never before has the situation been this bad, where, like I said, a state close to bankruptcy and very little friends in the international community. Nobody seems interested in just bailing Lebanon out unless there are reforms. And those in power are clinging on to that power. So, Sami, it is quite a precarious situation.
Zaina, on that point that you mentioned about the cabinet was meeting today, one of the things which was reported that they would be looking at is a potential what's called a haircut of up to 70% on bondholders. Do we have any idea if they've gone for those kinds of measures?
No, the Prime Minister realized how much opposition he faced when that was leaked to the media a few weeks back. The Prime Minister even had to make a televised address and make clear that if there's any haircut on bank deposits, it would only affect 2% of bank deposits. That means those who have millions of dollars, and they're believed to be the politicians, the big businessmen who are, friends with the politicians. And that's why you saw every politician suddenly raise their voice and say, no, we are not going to accept this. And the people, of course, say, and some of the politicians even said that we're not going to pay the price for the government's the way that they've mismanaged the economy all these years. So that doesn't seem to be on the table any longer, at least not 90% of the deposits in the banks. But Sami, a haircut has already happened, because when you're not allowed to withdraw your dollar deposits in dollars and you withdraw it in Lebanese liras at the official rate of 1,500, then that is a 60% haircut on your deposits. And a lot of Lebanese work abroad. They send their money back home, and the banks were really providing people with high interest rates, trying to lure hard currency in the country. And that is why the central bank governor has been criticized for his monetary policies. It is a very complicated situation. The government says it's going to fight corruption. The government says it's going to enact laws to take politicians to court. But the biggest question is, can it do that? Yes, maybe Hassan Diab calls himself an independent, and all his ministers are independent.
Zaina, just let me jump in there. We were looking at pictures. If the cameraman pans back to the right there, something's on fire. I assume, what is that, an ATM machine?
Yes, this is a cash machine. Yes, this is a cash machine. They've been vandalizing cash machines, the facade of banks, since last night in Tripoli. But in the past few days, bank branches in other cities in Lebanon have been vandalized. And we've seen this happen before. At the beginning of when the protest movement began in October, a lot of the banks were vandalized because of those capital controls, because of the fact that people couldn't access their savings. So
how significant is it, Zaina, to see images like this in a place like Tripoli? I mean, Lebanon is no stranger to violence, but for so much of its recent history, that violence has been so attached to factions, ethnic, religious divides. We saw Tripoli at the beginning of the Syrian revolution get wrapped up in some of that, but this is different right now, correct?
Well, to a certain extent, yes. It is about poverty. People from all sects coming together and demanding a change of leadership. That's what we saw in October. But at the same time, there was at least half of the population still supporting the mainly sectarian political parties. This definitely, what people here call their uprising, their revolution, did not have the support of the majority of the Lebanese people. Many Lebanese still supported their parties for a number of reasons. They were benefiting from them, they gave them jobs, or for ideological reasons, for that matter. And that is one of the reasons why the protest movement was not really able to achieve much. And then there was, of course, the fact that the state fought back. They clung on to power. Those in power have been in power for decades. They know how to hold on to power. They control the army. They control the internal security forces. So the people were up against a militarized state, and there was a lot of arrests and violence. We've seen scenes like this back in December and in January. So a lot of people were really discouraged from returning to the streets. They felt that even if we return to the streets, it's not going to achieve much. It's not going to change the leadership. There must be other ways to do that. And a lot of people have been calling for early elections. The politicians are not heeding that call either. But you say Tripoli and you say sectarian politics. Well, that's where it is quite dangerous, because this is a city, a majority Sunni city, which feels that they have no say in the government. The Sunnis, according to Lebanon's power-sharing sectarian system, they should hold the post of prime minister. And yes, Hassan Diab is a Sunni, but he was not appointed by the Sunni community. He doesn't have the support of the Sunni community. So they feel other sects have taken over their constitutional powers. So that's another layer to the conflict in Lebanon. But as you can see, the army is now out in force. They are blocking roads linking to the Bank Street. They are now in control of this area of Tripoli. But the biggest question we have to see is whether or not they'll be able to maintain control in the next hours or days to come.
All right, good stuff there from Zaina Khudr, updating us on a very dynamic and fluid situation in the northern Lebanese city of Tripoli. And as we've been saying, Lebanon's economy has been in free fall for months, with jobs in short supply and the government struggling under massive debts. Over the past week, the currency has fallen rapidly, forcing the central bank to set the selling price of dollars at £3,200 for money transfer firms. The government is in talks with the International Monetary Fund for a bailout. The 5-year plan aims to boost growth to 2% by 2024. It requires $10 to $15 billion, though. Well, the money is much needed, with the IMF forecasting Lebanon's economy shrinking by 12% this year. Walid Fakhreddin is a media scholar and activist in Beirut. He says people have nothing left to lose in Lebanon.
What the people are worried about now is not only the lockdown, it's the collapsing economy and the continuous failure of the illegitimate government of Hassan Diab, which actually did not get a vote of confidence. It got a minority vote in the parliament. Less than half the parliament voted for it. However, due to the support of Hezbollah to this government, it was formed. They promised that they will come up with economical solutions. They will get some kind of support and economical help to Lebanon. They failed. Not much has been done till today. There's no plan of going out of this financial crisis. The people have no other choice but to go out to the streets again to demonstrate. Definitely, there are going to be riots. There are going to be kind of violence due to the fact that people just lost over 60% of their income or of the value with the devaluation of the Lebanese pound. Other than that, many companies are shutting down. With the coronavirus, people were locked down, so other companies aren't paying salaries. With all of this little that has been done by our government,